Hi, Sipho. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm excited to dig into your journey, learn more about Matrix Rental Solutions, and hear where we see things going next. For those tuning in, Matrix Rental, aka My Matrix Rent, is a universal rental application platform both helping renters and landlords with streamlining processes. This is a great chance to hear from founders directly about scaling, tech, market fit, and more. To get us started, tell us a little bit more about Matrix Rental Solutions.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. Thanks for having me on, Ishan. So, Matrix Rental Solutions is a universal rental application. Think common app meets affordable housing. When I first started thinking about building a company, I looked at big challenges and big problems to solve. Here in the United States, owning a home is a choice. However, for almost 49 million Americans, renting is not. And so we wanted to create essential solutions that we could deliver to the market using technology. And so when we looked at the idea of multiples of rental application fees and how those fees compound, we developed a streamlined interface that allows residents to create a single application but use it to apply multiple times. And so we started the company in 2021, and since then, we've been having success with seeing the application spread into now 11 states. So excited to tell you a little bit about our journey.
Now, with the origin story, what made you come in to say, hey, there needs to be a better solution? Was it a partner, a friend, or where was it? What made you come up with this idea?
Yeah, so I spent years working in finance, followed by a couple of experiences at some awesome technology companies, but really always focused on finding and solving big problems. Look no further than, I don't know, back in 2019, I was moving from apartment to apartment in the city and encountered a rental application process where the application was a piece of paper and I was given a folder and told to fill it up with my most sensitive information. And I just thought to myself, there has to be a better way. Lo and behold, the journey took multiples of days because for every piece of paper you give someone, you need a person that's going to read and analyze it. And it's then I started kind of thinking through, is there a better way to do this? It wasn't until I really dug into the process around subsidized housing that I found that you had even more pieces of paper and even more time compounded. And I've always kind of learned that for every home that sits vacant in the market, you have a landlord who's not being paid rent, but you also have a person who's not housed. So we've just sought to create better solutions that fuse that process together and reduce the friction in the process.
Now, out of curiosity, is every state like, or do you have to switch your rental process per state?
So we started off building looking for a common denominator. This Section 8 rental program or the Housing Choice Voucher program is in fact a federal program. So you'll find it's the same across the country. However, when you really dig in, each city, each state has their own kind of tweaks and process changes that they put behind it. But what we wanted to do was to build a product that had as much centralization and standardization as possible. And then as we've migrated and grown into new states, be able to make it adaptable to that particular market's process.
And what was your earliest challenges?
How much time do we have? No, I mean, as a non-technical founder, building in such a high-stakes environment has definitely been challenging. I've been fortunate to be surrounded by great investors, great teammates that have helped us iterate and build the company to what it is today. But I would absolutely say that the intimidation of being a non-technical founder, building as a sole founder in a highly technical market, definitely proved to be challenging. More challenging than I would have thought at the beginning.
And what were your biggest, like, what was one obstacle that you made you almost throw in the towel, and how did you overcome it?
Fundraising is not easy. It's not easy and it's not always fun. But realistically, that was a challenge. I came into a market where, post-COVID, the pandemic changed a lot of the way that the market invests, changed a lot of the solutions and the outcomes out there. So not to say that it's not doable, but I definitely found that to be challenging. Trying to separate myself away from other founders, especially in a growing space. You can make the case that PropTech is now what fintech once was, in the fact that so many more companies, so many brilliant founders are diving in and trying to solve complex problems. That was something that I definitely struggled with in the early innings. Fortunately, we found some amazing investors and great partners that really kind of caught on to what we were saying, and it's been a big contributing factor to how we've gotten to where we are today.
Now, what are your core values and promises with your company that delivers to renters and landlords?
Yeah, we took the perspective that this truly is an ecosystem. Whether you're talking about residents, whether you're talking about housing providers, whether you're talking about public housing officials, nonprofits, we all play in the same ecosystem as housing. And one of the biggest things that we always strive for as a company is to look for these mutual wins, ways that we can improve the system, that it benefits everyone. And really focusing on that is the ethos of the company. I like to say that we're socially aligned. We're looking to do greater good and achieve greater outcomes, but really kind of keeping that as the pole in the tent, that we are looking for solutions that benefit the greater good and benefit everyone, has allowed us to problem solve at a rate that is somewhat unprecedented. The fact that we have so many player types and personas that are on our platform participating in the market definitely is a testament to trying to keep that at the back of our minds, looking for big problems to solve, but to solve them together.
Now, a lot of people say, which one came first, the chicken or the egg? So for you, which one came first? Was it you concentrated on the renters or the landlords?
Uh, Fantastic question. I mean, when we looked at building out the platform, we started off as a traditional rental application. We knew we wanted to become that more affordable housing centric solution, but we knew it was a crawl, walk, run, or the chicken and the egg, as you put it. And so we started off by building platform solutions for housing providers, so for landlords. And what that in turn did is it brought the renters to our platform. So it made it so that we didn't have to go out and actually look direct to consumer, although their challenges were the ones that we solved for. As we kept growing and stepping up our scale, once we got to the public housing arena, we found that the same thing existed, where we had landlords, we were bringing public housing authorities, except now, not only did we have the housing providers bringing tenants to the platform, we actually now had the reach of the public housing authorities bringing the tenants to the platform as well. And so, I would say building like a marketplace that has multiple sides to it, there is a one comes before the other, but I think it's always very intentional in knowing that they will all come if you build it. Little Field of Dreams reference.
Now, how do you define your success for the platform today? User growth, revenue, retention?
Yeah, I think, user growth is absolutely a factor that we look at, or a KPI that we monitor, revenue being very important as well. We look at units on platform as another leading indicator. The more housing providers that we have that know us, that know about us, that trust us, the more units are being added to the platform. But by extension, the more options we're giving the residents that utilize our services. And so, as of late, I think a big growth factor has been looking at some of the KPIs and the outcomes on the platform. So, not knowing that we don't necessarily control the decision-making process, what we aim to do is to gather, organize the data in a way that it's more usable so that the decision-making process is easier. So not necessarily determining outcomes, but making it so things are more organized and streamlined.
Now, what's your vision for a matrix rental solution? Where will it be in 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, as the rental housing market becomes more competitive, we've already noticed here, in the new home sales market, inventory has been depressed over the last several years, but that's contributed to making a more competitive rental market and obviously making things a lot more expensive. So we are seeing an uptick and a growth in that would-be buyer now potentially on the sidelines renting for longer periods of time. And so what we've aimed to do is evolve with that use case. At the top of the market, it's more competitive now. So residents that are holding housing choice vouchers, residents that have subsidies, those that are in low to moderate income, are not necessarily walking into situations where they're the only one or they're one of one. They're competing against someone who is a would-be potential homeowner. And so for that reason, sharpening our solutions toolkit. I'll give you an example. We recently partnered with Experian, whereby as a credit reporting agency, we have access to so much more complementary and supporting data. So integrating the idea of credit improvement, integrating the idea of multi-source data, what we really strive to do is to give the most complete picture of who a would-be renter would be, but giving the landlord a basket of factors that they can really start to wrap their heads around, and with the idea being that we help get more people into homes faster.
Now, it sounds like your product is way more streamlined, easier to use for all of these renters and landlords. What do you see are the biggest objections from either a landlord or renter using you guys?
Well, you have to fight the inertia of change. This is not a marketplace that we invented. It's not a market that's brand new. People have owned and rented homes for as long as renting homes has existed. And so for that reason, many people have their solutions. They have what they know, what works. But what we're doing is we're combining nuanced new age technology behind that. It's not a matter of walking in and ripping out, the guts and cords of someone's already existing well-baked process. It's giving them complementary solution sets that help them solve for challenges that once upon a time just were the way things were. To give you an example, we're reducing the turnaround time by 50% in the public housing space. And so this is something that, already using a basket of solutions that a would-be property manager already knows and believes that is just the way things are. With the new look that Matrix and our technology provide in the market, we are proving that we're taking existing processes and augmenting them to make them faster and easier to do.
Now, with expansion side of things, is there anything stopping your rapid growth or hindering you, whether it's you need to keep making more hires or are you ready to go as quickly as it can go?
Well, Ishan, unfortunately, there's only 24 hours in a day and 7 days in a week. So if you could expand that out, I'm sure we'd find ways to move faster. But no, I mean, I'm really comfortable with, the way that we go. I mean, everyone wants to do more, everyone wants to get better. But one thing I will say is that, we've learned a ton. Listening to our customers has been a big thing. We've been able to, sharpen our product set, sharpen our tools, and make it so that we've met the market. And we're going to continue to meet and evolve with the market. And we're putting ourselves out there as pace setters to be able to even solve problems that many people didn't even know existed. So I think, the idea of there's an old African proverb that goes, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And that's something that we've done through this ecosystem, through listening to those customers, but really fine-tuning our solutions to make it so that we're solving real problems.
Now, if a young entrepreneur, he wanted to grow, what would you say is the best way he would do it? Would he go concentrate more on the partnership, the clientele, or what would you say would be the biggest thing he needs to make sure he has down, or she?
Well, I don't know if I'm in a position to be giving everyone the best of advice, but I'll give it my best shot. I really say rolling up your sleeves and hitting the pavement as a founder is the best way to learn about your market. You have to listen to your customers. You have to really get your hands dirty and involved with the problems that you're trying to solve. One of the things that I've seen some of the most successful founders that I know, one thing that's been common is they really know their customers. They look at their customers less as people that pay bills that the product generates and more as partners and thought leaders. When I came into this space, the first thing that I did was I surrounded myself with people that have been in it. The Housing Choice Voucher Program, for example, is 50 years old. So the first thing I wanted to do is find people that have seen a lot more than I have. And so being someone that came into housing as somewhat lay to it, I came more from an economics and finance background. The first thing I did was to seek out really, really strong advisors and really strong kind of core anchor customers that have helped inform and guide our journey. And truthfully, we wouldn't be here where we are without them.
Now, what do you see as the biggest friction for adaptation? Is it the challenging landlord process, regulatory constraints, trust, data integration, or is it something else?
Yeah, I mean, trusting the process is a big thing. But, as we kind of tongue in cheek say, we build trust through transparency. Being able to provide clearer visions of data has been something that we've definitely put our hats on. But there's just so many challenges. I mean, the inertia that the market moves at today, and I say the market really more broadly speaking of technology, when you're kind of fighting on the backdrop of processes that are, to your point, heavily regulated, that are, maybe not, let's say, the fastest moving. I think we all know that the public housing markets don't move nearly as fast and evolve as fast as, let's say, market rate rentals, but really trying to strike that happy medium and that balance where if you have conviction that you are truly solving a problem and you've done the digging to figure out that the solution you're bringing to market can solve for that problem, you really put people in a position where they have no choice but to listen.
Now, as you scale, what are your current biggest operational or technical bottlenecks that you've seen?
Integration is definitely one. A lot of the solutions that are put in place in this market are set and forget. They've been put in place long, long, long time ago. And so coming in and actually trying to kind of get to the bottom of that whole well and figure out what it is that you're working with. But I think just definitely like the rate of change in the market as it exists today. We go against the backdrop of even the challenging local versus state versus federal regulatory framework. We definitely struggle with the idea that there's economic constraints. The example I gave before about the profile of who is a renter is constantly changing. And, the supply side of the curve is definitely one that's challenging. For every person that becomes a new renter, it's not a one-to-one ratio of, oh, there's just new supply being added. So, all of these are challenges that, back to that whole idea of ecosystem, collaborating with multiple participants across the ecosystem to actually listen with empathy for what those challenges are, has I've found been very, very helpful to forecasting, the road ahead and skating to where the puck is going.
Okay. And If you could have a magic wand and instantly fix one problem in your business right now, what would it be?
Well, I already said more hours in a day. I think the challenges that we have are very realistic, but we're not alone. We've done, I think, a very nice job with building partnerships, building community within the areas that we get to understand more of those challenges. So I don't know if like a magic wand, I guess, per se, would solve for the challenges we have, but you can always use more hands on deck. You could always use, more collaboration. You could always use, I'd say, move faster, right? Move fast, break things, but fix them faster. So I would say, more hands on deck. We can never have too many people rowing the boat in the same direction.
How are you saying more hours a day, more hands-on next? In your roadmap for the next year, do you see room or need for external partnerships as such as AI or automatic automation support? Or does
That's an interesting point, Ishan. With the evolution of AI, this is something that we sit right on the cusp of right now. Being able to scale faster, being able to do more with less hands. In fact, that's definitely been something that we've tapped into and taken advantage of. We recently partnered with AWS and Meta, and we're building some pretty cutting edge things that we're using to bring the AI evolution into a space that had previously not been touched as fast. So, the next year is very bright ahead. We are still relatively green fields in the space of, the affordable housing markets. But what we're doing is we're lending the best of breed of technology, and we're opening eyes and opening doors for the entire market.
Okay, so you guys are building your own AIs in-house and doing all your own workflows.
We tap into a little bit of everything. The build versus buy is always an interesting discussion point. I like to say that we strike a happy balance between having customers and partners we work with, but also building and supporting our own technology is something that we've internalized.
All right. Well, I mean, hey, if you could, I've always said, uh, build it instead of buying it. It always will work better to your advantage. And so that's always the best way. Now, leading a company is tough. What's one leadership lesson you've learned that you wish you knew earlier?
The road is long and tough, and one person doesn't know everything. I mean, I've definitely tried to know as much as I can as possible. But for any aspiring founder out there, grit, determination, and self confidence are just of the utmost importance. If you don't have conviction in what it is that you're doing, I think that there's a million different ways to make a living in this world. Starting a company and founding it from scratch is definitely a journey. It's challenging, but having a great support system, really believe in not just yourself, but the mission, but the cause that you're out there building and fighting for, it goes a long.
What keeps you motivated when things get hard? Any personal rituals or mindsets that practices that you lean on?
Working in this space of affordable housing and working with, many low to moderate income renters, I think there's always that constant mission oriented belief. I think also we see a lot, people that are in situations that are challenging, that are far worse off than probably the worst thing that I can imagine going through in my day. So I think that's something that keeps me level set. I started off telling you I come from a family from Zimbabwe. I've seen challenges that people face every day, and I think always putting into perspective the size and the gravity of the challenges that you face is definitely reassuring. And, not to say that each and every one of our problems aren't monumental, but it also helps to right size the size of the challenge and also keeps me going and motivates me to continue to push through it.
Now, your insights have been incredible. What made you say, hey, I don't want to do this 9 to 5 anymore. I want to do that 24/7, no sleep. Let's not worry about my health. Let's just go through it.
I mean, had the pleasure and the privilege in my career of working in a number of different capacities. I'd mentioned working in buy side trading technology for a number of years, followed by working at two hyper growth startups where I really got to see what it was like to build, scale, and succeed. That's a journey I always wanted for myself. Again, my family comes from humble roots and humble beginnings. And, I've always believed in the power of entrepreneurship, the power of self-determination and the outcomes. So it's always been something. But I think when I really got to my first startup and I got bit by that bug, it's hard to walk away from that. And so, to your point, the 24/7 grind, hey, who needs sleep anyway? I'd like to think that's a temporary place to be. Only time will tell. But I think being motivated by so many founders that came before me, so many founders that I still consider friends and in my network, especially those that have made it to the other side of the journey, it always kind of keeps that North Star mentality of knowing that anything's possible. But that's the amazing part about being in tech, it's the idea that there is so much out there that's possible. And the size and, size of outcome, size of effort, there's definitely some right sizing there. So very excited about the journey and wouldn't do anything different.
Now, I work personally in the AI side. A lot of people have been a little bit scared of it. What made you decide, hey, for me, my company, I need to jump into the AI side to keep growing instead of let me go towards the old processes and see how it goes?
Well, I mean that's the double-edged sword of AI. You know better than most. It's the idea that here today, gone tomorrow. The idea of automation, the idea of scale without hundreds of hours of complex development cycles. It definitely keeps you on your toes because you know that you can't get paralyzed by analysis. You really do have to keep moving at the pace of the market. I've always looked at AI as something that is working for you, and working for you in the sense that when you think about people that are trying to solve large challenges where they're lining up for support, picking up the phone to get answers, where AI can play such a well kind of balanced role in that is by providing access to information and increasing the operations efficiency of not only a company, but the day-to-day lives of our customers. In a challenging market where labor conditions are changing, economic principles are constantly changing, I love the idea that AI can truly be this well-trained constant that can keep businesses functioning effectively, that can keep people well-informed and moving the ball along. So, I've been excited thus far about what we've used AI for. Come back and talk to me in a couple of months. I think you'll be excited to see where we're going with this and what we want to do. But, that is something, the scale up, scale down processing that AI has provided, not only for us as a company, but is providing this industry, definitely keep me very excited.
This has been incredibly insightful. For the people listening who want to learn more about you or get in touch, where can they find you?
Yeah, please visit us on our socials, Instagram at MyMatrixRent. Feel free to check us out online, mymatrixrent.com, and stop by any property technology conference or booth. You'll probably see one of us walking around.
Now, for people who want to partner, invest, or support you, what's your ask right now? What would you be looking for?
My ask is we are constantly we're turning over every rock we can find. For those that have insights and access into the public housing markets, for those that have insights and access into solving large scale problems, we're here for it. And so, as we think about moving the ball forward, you can never have too many advocates. Partnerships are always exciting because especially if you can strike that balance where two companies or two groups come together and their combined efforts are stronger than any of their individuals, that's my kind of partnership. So always excited to chat. But as always, good to talk to you, and I appreciate what you do for the community.
It's great talking to you. And for everyone who's been listening, thank you for listening. Hope to have you guys listen to the next upcoming Growth Neuron podcasts. Thank you so much. Have a great
Thanks a
rest.
lot, Ishan.